Welcome to NUIC Football, joined by Greg Armstrong. I am your host, Kyle Kampmier. As we get set to begin our 10th season of coverage over the best small school conference in the state of Illinois, we welcome Greg to our preview show for the first time. Greg, thanks for joining, man. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Hey, it's great to be here. Yeah, so I've been on your playoff show, but never a weekly regular episode. So I thought about that earlier today. This is a first.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. I'm glad that you're able to take the time out and fill in because, the last few years, like we were talking before we came live, doing this by myself, it's been fun, but like you said, it's always great to have banter back and forth and actually have a conversation with somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
So, as we open the 2025 season, the NUIC finds itself in the conversation of having the top teams across the state once again. We talked about it in the preseason ratings about a month ago, and now we've already put out the list of our preseason all state rankings as well. And the NUIC has seen 20 teams reach the state finals over the past 21 seasons, with a record of 16-4 at the state finals during that time. This season, we're already talking about 5 teams being talked about in the top of their respective classifications to start the season, and another one looking or hoping to return to its spot among the conference elite as well.
Yeah, every time you read through the accolades, it's still like, wow, it's remarkable what this conference does. And, Lena Winslow gets the attention now because the run they've been on, but you go back and you just see the names, right? It's spread across the conference, teams that have had that success at the highest level. I love it. It's exciting to talk about, and optimism runs high to start the season. So here we go.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. So let's get started.
Hey there, local high school football fans. This is Sean Considine, a Byron Tiger and Iowa Hawkeye alumni, and now an LPL financial advisor. I'm passionate about high school football because it's the purest form of the game where communities come together, lifelong character is built, and the love for football runs deeper than the scoreboard. You can find me in my Byron office most days until I run off to football practice. I'm happy to talk about football or the markets. I'll leave that up to you. I want to wish everyone across Illinois a safe, successful, and memorable high school football season. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC.
The first team that we're talking about is going to be Dupec. Obviously, they set a new co-op record with 10 wins last season before losing in the quarterfinals for the second year in a row after a 22-13 loss in a tough, nail-biting game against Wilmington. They bring in new head coach Kyle Demas, and with him, he brings a lot of the same staff that Dupec's had over the last several years back with him. But the biggest thing is they lose a big playmaker in Cooper Hoffman.
Yeah, I think when you look at this Dupec team, I think you have to start with this is a new beginnings, right? It's a new refreshed look at the Rivermen, and we're gonna have to see what that means when it comes to the field, because for years, the past several years, it's been one Hoffman, then handed off to another Hoffman, all while their dad was coaching, all of it being at a pretty high level. Within that family, they really rose Dupec up to a new level. Brought them from where they started as a co-op to where they are now is remarkable. The turnaround they've built there. And now it's somebody else's turn, right? Kyle Demas' turn to step in. So I think I'm interested to see what they look like on the field, because it may not be the same, but that doesn't mean that it's not productive, and it's not going to mean winning football.
Right, and that's one of the things that we discussed on your show here a couple weeks ago is, In talking with Tyler Hoffman, he always stated that they did not necessarily have an offense that was truly considered a spread offense. They built an offense around the personnel that they had, and Kyle Demas is looking to do the exact same thing. So while we may not see that dual threat QB that we're used to seeing out of Cooper over the last 3 years, it's next man up mentality, and if that means changing some of their offensive schematics around to fit the people that they have, that's exactly what they're going to do. And just looking at some of the things that they have here, you have Dermot Dolan and Lucas Rousseau turning in the backfield. And those two guys combined have rushed for almost 1,800 yards along with 19 touchdowns. So with that, you're going to expect to see their output and performance pick up in this upcoming season.
Yeah, I'm excited for those two pieces coming back. The rushing attack they have coming back, and to complement that is a host of returning offensive linemen: Trey Jones, Dylan White, Colton Maurer, and Justin Anderson will make the move to the line along with Zach Carlson at tight end. So there's a lot of experience up front leading the way for two pretty good running backs that, have made their mark and will continue to make their mark. I think that's great building blocks right there.
Oh, for sure. And that's one of the things that Kyle Demas even stated to us in the preseason previews was, this is probably the most physical offensive line that they've had in his time with the program. They're obviously very excited to return that backfield in Dolan and Rosso as well. Obviously, there's going to be some big shoes to fill with Cooper graduating, among some other key players as well. But they need to be able to find a way to replace that offensive production. And that will definitely be a tall task, but you have offensive coordinator Kyle Nolan returning. So really, offensively, it's almost like it's still straight status quo as it's been for the last 7-8 years, however long it's been now. I'm losing track.
Yeah. Well, and I think that'll be huge, right? That to keep some of that consistency when we talk about new beginnings, but it's not like a total refresh. No, not a total restart here. There's some names, obviously, in the play on the field and also in the coaching staff that are going to continue to keep things rolling. I think that's a great sign.
Right, absolutely. So, defensively too, you're looking at Dolan returning to that defensive line along with Colton Maurer. Linebackers, you have Justin Anderson and Trey Jones coming back. And then defensive backs are returning in both Brady Moore and J.J. Weidman. And then you take a look at some of the guys that they got coming up too, like Declan Dolan and Cooper Hamilton and Tyler Tunick. These guys are multiple sport athletes. Declan Dolan is Dermot's little brother, but if you looked at him, you would think he was the bigger brother. He's got a lot more size than what Dermot has. But with that, they're expecting big things out of him on both the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. And Cooper Hamilton was pretty much a freshman phenom last year for Pecatonica in other sports, along with Dupec in baseball, and then Pecatonica for basketball. So he has some familiarity playing at the varsity level already under his belt. So now he's going to be stepping into a bigger role on the football field come this fall, too.
Yeah. Kyle, are you getting a little sentimental that this will be the last year of Dupec in the NUIC?
That's a great question, Greg, and I am. I think that I think that it's been a little bit unfair, the criticism that Dupec has received over the last few years as they've gotten better. Nobody had a problem with Dupec in the NUIC being a 3A school when they weren't winning, but then you change course and now they're winning, and they're not just winning, but they're getting deeper into the Class 3A playoffs on a yearly basis. And there's mixed feelings on, should Dupec be here? Should they not be here? But my argument always is nobody had a problem when Lena Winslow was playing in 3A. Nobody had a problem when EPC was playing in 3A. And if they did, you didn't really hear about it that much because we had a bigger conglomerate of teams ranging from 1A to 3A at that time. And now Dupec finds themselves as the only team that's a 3A team in the conference. So their transition to going to the Big Northern, while we'll miss it for sure, is a great addition for them. Obviously, a couple years ago, they'd done that transition at the junior high level. So you knew eventually at some point this was going to happen. And, logistically, it makes sense for them too. They're going to cut down on their travel a lot, with a lot of the big northern teams closer to their backyard. So,
Yeah.
I think Demas had even told me that the furthest game that they would have to travel is under an hour. And right now, it's like an hour and a half trip to get to Galena for them. So, or to Fulton for that matter. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good move for Dupec, but yeah, it does hurt a little bit to see another NUIC team pulling out.
Yeah. I'm sure you'll find a little space to talk about him, a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I've already been asked by
Yeah.
some Dupec followers, we're really going to hate to see us go to the Big Northern because now we're going to lose, coverage, and we might just have to look at an added expansion into the Big Northern for next year. So
Yeah. View from the West is going to kind of maneuver that way, because we'd already kind of talked about Byron and some of the other teams when playoff time or later in the season would roll around. And now with Dupec making the move, it's a perfect fit. It's schools like Dixon that we never really talked about that are right there next to Sterling that we probably could have talked about anyway before. So yeah. The coverage will still be there. That conference is certainly going to get covered.
It will be different, and we got a partnership this year as well with Sean Considine and Byron Wealth Management, which we're very excited about. And of course, the recent success of Byron, like you stated, has definitely brought additional coverage to the northwest part of the state of Illinois, which has been tremendous for the past few decades, as we talked about earlier. But yeah, it's going to be a lot more fun, and we might just have to take a little bit of a different look at how we do things moving forward. But I think we can definitely make things happen that way.
Well, speaking of Byron, talk about some of the matchups here for Dupec, and Byron's on their schedule already this year.
Yeah, I mean, you take a look at the start of that schedule, and the first half of the season should be a good preview of where we expect Dupec to be and where they may land. But those last 5 weeks, man, that is a gauntlet of a schedule at all playoff teams with the exception of Forston, who we'll talk about later as the show goes on. But we're definitely expecting Forston to tend to rise back up to get back to where their normal status among the NUIC teams typically is. But yeah, you go EPC, Byron, Forston, and then you got the heavy hitters at the bottom in Stockton and Lena Winslow. And by bottom, I mean those two teams are really looking to be 1-2 in conference play come the start of the year.
Yeah, that Stockton, Lena Winslow, and back-to-back weeks. That looks like it's going to be two really good opponents. Yep.
I know that, taking a look at some other things that Coach Demas has said too, they want to be able to get the ball control going on both sides of the ball, controlling the line of scrimmage, which he even stated is pretty cliche, and it is. But games are always won and lost in the trenches. You got to have that line play. They got to stay physical, but another big key element is you got to stay healthy. You hear that a lot out of a lot of coaches, and it's true because it's small school football. And as we all know, you're going to have some players that are going to play both ways. Sometimes you're going to have more players play both ways. Health is always a big concern.
Yep, definitely.
So let's move on to the Dakota Indians. Last year, they went 0-9 in the regular season. And so far, it really hasn't been a great response for Coach Eric Diddish and company that they were expecting for trying to rebuild what Dakota is. They're battling low numbers once again. They're going to try to give it a go to compete. Last I've heard, they've had 20 players committed, and that's program-wide. That's not varsity-only numbers, but that means that they're going to play a varsity-only schedule in the hopes and anticipation, one, they stay healthy and can continue to compete at that level, and also hoping that they can get more players to eventually come out for the program as maybe the season progresses, or at least keep it alive so you can continue to build on what you're trying to lay down foundation wise.
Yeah, I think that, actually, I would think that as we speak, as we record this podcast, I'm guessing that within the next week or so is pretty vital to that last minute. Can you get anybody else out before things go for real? I know it's getting late in the game, but it's not too late at this point. So I imagine they're still probably trying to find, as many as they can to come out. And it's just, I think for the players that are committed, that are coming back, and for Coach Diddish, I think it just comes down to finding a spark, finding some confidence, giving these, the student athletes that are committed right now, just any sort of excitement to build on, right? I mean, last year was tough, and it's going to be tough again, I would imagine, because of just numbers alone. But what can you do to find a little rallying cry, right? To find some excitement in the program. So, we'll see, but it's tough, and it looks tough going into this year with the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, and you're 100% right. I mean, it's never fun when you're playing in this type of situation, and then you got to go through and try to put pieces together. Coach Diddish enters his third season this year with a 3-15 record, so it's not like it's been all sunshine and rainbows since he's taken over the program. But at the same time, you kind of knew that Dakota was going to have low numbers coming into the upcoming seasons through his progression, just based off of what you saw at the junior high levels before. Offensively, some top guys returning are going to be Jaden Gordon, who is a senior this year, along with sophomore Zeke Wales. Wales last year as a freshman rushed for 396 yards and really started to get more of those yards later in the season as he got more opportunities. Jaden Gordon has 786 career rushing yards. Dakota kind of leaned on him early in the season. He got a little injured, but they're going to need to get some of these guys to hopefully elevate their level of play to find ways, because their schedule really isn't that advantageous for them when you take a look at who they got coming down the road in that realm either.
I just think that's, that's the thing is I just mentioned trying to find a spark in this conference with as accomplished as it is. It's hard when you're buried at the bottom. It's hard to find. You got to rise up, and even a win against any team in this conference, any win is great, is a very quality victory. So any spark you can find, and may not come in the form of a win, but just any form of competing early on in the season to build some confidence, see what they can do. But yeah, like you said, a couple guys there that, return, who, we're in, hopefully if they can combine together, this year and maybe be a combo, backfield, so the one guy doesn't have to get so much so much work and so much getting banged up early in the season. We'll see if that maybe helps a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. They're going to have to do something. They start off the gates going to Pectonica, play Dupac. They follow that up with games against Forreston, Stockton, and Lena Winslow before they hit the halfway point to meet up with Rockford Lutheran. So, not the way you want to come out the gates, but at some point, if you want to raise the level of the program, you got to continue to fight, and that's definitely what they're going to have to do here.
Yeah. I mean, they're not that many years removed from a playoff victory, and the reason I know that best is because it came over my alma mater, Marquette. So it's, 5 years ago, probably?
It would have been 3 years ago. 2022, they reached the quarterfinals. So
yeah. So, I mean, not even as far back as I thought. So and I know that may not mean much right now. It's certainly the new current players and the new current system and the new, the numbers are what they are. But I'm just saying in general, these things can ebb and flow. So you fight through it, and change won't come overnight maybe, but man, you hope they can battle through it and find a spark and, find some momentum.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the QB position, Brody Good, who's been a all conference member or selection the last 2 seasons, started last season at quarterback for the opening game before moving back to a running back slash wide receiver position. He'll be under center again this season with the absence of Drake Davis. Keegan Zimmerman returns as the leading receiver, has 11 career catches under his belt, so definitely not a lot of experience there. And then defensively, you're talking about Wales and Good again are the top returners from a season ago on the defensive side of the ball. So they're going to have a lot of inexperience that they're going to have to work with and try to build the best that they can with what they have.
Yeah. Do you know who's their non-conference game?
Rockford Lutheran, week 5.
Oh, okay. So that's a pretty tough one too. They were a playoff team a year ago, so even when you step out of conference is a challenge. So,
yep, it really doesn't get any easier for Dakota as the season goes on.
yeah.
So we'll see what Dakota does, and hopefully they find, like you said, they find a spark that can keep building.
Need a fresh look? Look no further than Neff Paints, where quality meets craftsmanship. From gyms and locker rooms to living rooms and home projects, Neff Paints has you covered with top-tier products and expert service. Trusted by local pros and proud supporters of our area athletes, Neff Paints brings the durability, color, and finish that lasts. Ready to get started? Call Skylar at 815-541-7338 and take the first step toward your next transformation. Neff Paints, locally owned, community driven, quality you can see.
All right, we'll look at the EPC Wildcats. Obviously, EPC returns after a playoff run that ended a little bit shorter than they had anticipated. That first round loss to Rock Ridge last year, 22-8, left their final season record at 7-3. Coach McNutt has even stated that this year has to be a little different. They have to be able to control the line of scrimmage. And not only that, but they have to also find somebody to replace Adam Allwender at quarterback, which, they need to find an answer that will help contribute to their offense. And talking to a couple guys during the summer, they feel that they have that kid in Deacon Hoffmaster, which may be a good surprise. Coach McNutt didn't really talk much about who quarterback would be, so this is just all hearsay and conversation from other people. But it'll be exciting to see what they do at that position. But they do return a lot of other good pieces with this team on both sides of the ball. So we'll see how EPC comes out of the gates here.
Well, I think, if you have a new quarterback stepping in, I would feel, if I was the quarterback, I'd feel pretty comfortable having Draven Zier alongside me to be able to make some plays, if he's in my backfield. I'm feeling pretty good about that. He went over 1,400 yards in his career, 17 touchdowns, and he's hoping for a big season, and there's good reason why, right? There's a spark right there, and I think you've seen that talent on the field, and I think that should continue. I think that really helps solidify that offense that maybe has some, not question marks, but has some unknowns, some inexperience moving in. He's an experienced athlete that should make some plays.
Oh, yeah, and a big name at that. I mean, he's already closing in on 1,500 career rushing yards. He's hoping to rush for over 1,500 yards this upcoming season as the feature back in the Wildcat offense. And if he does so, he just would add his name to another big list of NUIC greats that reached that pivotal 3,000-yard plateau. And he's already got 17 touchdowns under his belt. With that, he's going to have some other players, specifically in Brody Simons or Brecken Hayden, that will also help carry the load for them offensively. Brecken Hayden ran for like 143 yards last year in total. And I know in the game against Dakota was really his breakout game performance where he rushed for over 100 yards in that game. So really a lot of his career yardage came through one game, but this year he'll have that opportunity to step into a bigger role and carry a larger burden with him as well.
Yeah. I I think when you look at, we've talked about the backfield and who's coming back. The offensive linemen should help them out too. Will Burchin, Tegan Dyson, and help me with the last name, Brody Vogelli. Vaguely.
Yep.
There you go. So I think that having those offensive linemen back creates that much more stability.
Yeah, and then you got Zy Haverland too, returning that tight end, and he's the leading receiver coming back. Granted, he only has 10 career catches, but he is going to provide a big impact, whether it be in a passing game that could take place, but more so being able to be another blocker on that line, get downfield, seal off the edge, get to a backer, maybe even a defensive back if he can, because he's got great size, great strength, great speed. What's most undervalued is the tight end position because of what they can provide to an offense.
Yeah.
And Zy Haverland provides that for EPC.
Well, I hate to go back to it, but I've seen a lot of Marquette offenses that they don't throw the ball a whole lot, but man, a tight end is really nice to have for that, that pop pass once in a while. And like you said, having a body out there to block downfield becomes huge.
Yep. Defensively, this might be one of the best linebacking cores across the NUIC with Brody Simons, Will Burchin, and Haverland all at linebacker. Burchin himself is going to be a guy who is probably going to be very close, if he hasn't already become the all-time leading tackler in school history. He's been a 100-tackle guy every single year since his freshman year. Obviously, with that, he's received all-conference accolades for the defensive side of the ball. Another 100-tackle season is going to put him right up there, if not surpass the NUIC elites in this conference, and he very well could finish as the all-time leading tackler in conference history too.
Yeah. Last year I was at the playoff game against Rock Ridge, and even in a losing effort, I still felt like they played pretty well defensively, and I think you saw them hang around in that game a long time, and, they fell short, but I think defensively they did hang around in that one against an offense that was led by Cullen Schweigen, who was an all-state athlete, who was a really good football player. And they did enough to contain it, right, and keep themselves in the ball game defensively. So, yeah, I think having those pieces back, I think this is a team that we were wondering a year ago, kind of, would they make that step? And they did. They jumped into the playoff mix. Now do they take that next step? Is it a playoff victory that's coming? I'm sure that's what they're pushing for.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they want to get back to where they once stood, which if you look back at 2018, they were conference champions, a score away from potentially being state champs because they lost to the eventual state champs in GCMS. And, and that was under Coach McNutt's first year at the helm of EPC. So now he's in like year 7, and he's got another great group of kids building off of what they had last year. And like you said, I mean, that game against Rock Ridge, yeah, it was tough for them. But they showed a lot of grit. They were, like you said, they never got themselves out of the game. We hyped that up as a big game. I think you and Mitch may have picked Rock Ridge in that game. I know I did pick EPC in that game. But in reality, we both agreed that we could have seen that game go in either direction. And, it went in Rock Ridge's favor. So, tip of the hat to the Rockets there on that game. And like you said, they put a great game plan together and held a very potent offense to 8 points. And, yeah, I mean, it's great for EPC here because they can build. They're not going to sneak up on anybody this year because, they're already being talked about in preseason state rankings and all that stuff too. So they're going to have teams coming after them every single week. And one of those teams is the first team that they start the season off with against Fulton. And, we're going to talk about Fulton here down the road of the show here, but Fulton's a team that just missed the playoffs last year at 4-5, and they're going to be a team that is looking to build upon the experience that they have coming back as well. That's going to be a huge game for both these teams getting out to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about wanting to build that positive momentum in week 1, and that's one of those games where both those teams, EPC got in the playoffs last year. Fulton fell just short. If, depending on who wins in week 1, certainly still a long season left, but it gets you on that right track. So,
yeah, and EPC is going to need a strong start, because if you look at the last half of their schedule, it's Dupec, Forreston, Stockton, Lena, Winslow in that order. So they got to get out in a hurry, and let's not be remiss of Galena sitting there in week 3, who was a quarterfinalist just a season ago too.
Yep.
Some other guys that EPC is looking to help build upon and step into big roles include Sawyer Williams, who is looking at opportunities at wide receiver and defensive back, Clayton Downs on the offensive line, Bryson Vagley at wide receiver and potentially another DB or linebacker, and then Brogan Keltner on both sides of the ball on the offensive and defensive line too. So they're going to have some pieces that they can work around. Some of these key newcomers that Coach McNutt's excited about will have to step up into big roles and progress quickly for EPC to see the success that they need. I mean, realistically, they need to get out of the starting gates, just like any other team really, but it's going to be critical that they get off to that 3-0, 4-0 type start to start the season before they get into the meat of their schedule too.
Yeah, I think this is one of those teams that I think we'll get to it down the way, but I think we have a couple teams that are in the mix at the top, and then there is a big the middle is all kind of right there, and I think that where does EPC fall? Are they near the upper echelon or in the middle? I think we'll figure it out. There's going to be some X factor games in here. We'll figure it out.
Oh, and that's like you said, that's a great thing about this conference.
Yep.
You can have a team that you expect to be 9-0, and then all of a sudden they're sitting at 7-2 because another team came up, surprised them that you weren't expecting to be there, and matched that intensity. And one of those teams that we're going to get set to talk about right now are the Forreston Cardinals.
Yeah.
Forreston was 2-7 a season ago. Coach Janicki, it was the worst season that they've had since 1994, which was the last time they had a 2-win season. It was the first time that Forreston had missed the playoffs since 2009, when Coach Janicki was still a high school player himself. So, that tells you the kind of experience that Forreston had been on, and then they lost that a season ago. So, obviously this season, Coach Janicki is looking for his juniors and sophomore classes to fill key roles, and they're going to need to do so quickly. But with that, they also return a lot of players off of last year's team that had either times starting on offense or defense or both, and had significant playing time as well. Because if you take a look at it, he's got like 18 guys coming back with significant experience under their belts already. Offensively, that's going to start at running back with Jonathan Milnes, who is the leading rusher with 531 yards in his career. Mix that in with Caden Loomis and Mickey Propst. They're also going to be returning to that backfield, on which, Keenan Janicki is hoping that his double wing offense can create more openings for these guys to make plays and get downfield quick. At quarterback, they return Brady Gill, who's been running the offense for the last 2 seasons. So there again, you have an experienced guy calling the plays, running that offense. That will be huge for the Cardinals this year.
Well, I think it's like a second coach on the field, right? When you just know, when you're that comfortable that much experience on the field. I think that's huge. And, when you look at records from the year before, in most any conference we cover, right? We cover on View from the West, you're going to say, okay, they were 2-7 a year ago. So what are they going to do to rebuild? Do they get 4 wins? Maybe they're talking playoffs. I think this is a whole different conversation. I think we could easily see them back in the playoffs, and then it's a matter of just how good can they be beyond that. I have too much respect for this program and for what Coach Janicki has built and what he does day in and day out to just dismiss it as a 2-win team again. You can't do that. So that's what makes this conference so interesting, is that there's no team can you just dismiss, based on last year.
No, and like you were stating, just to piggyback off of that, you got a team that's 2-7. You expect that your returning players might stay down in the dumps and carry that 2-7 season into another 2-7, 3-6 type season. That's not the case with Forreston, man. I mean, I got a lot of flack for not having them in my top 20 teams to watch in Class 1A this year. In my defense, I said that, it's kind of hard to be a top 20 team to watch when you're 2-7. But at the same time, there's a lot of excitement here. And yes, they are definitely going to be a team to watch. Like you said, their history speaks for itself. They're one of the most accomplished programs in NUIC history. They're perennially one of the top teams that you're always talking about. Last year was an anomaly at this point. Now it's time to make that answer, and they got a lot of pieces here that can make that happen.
Yeah, I think so for sure.
Offensive line, you got Brennan Byers, Colin Bismarck, Jacob Kobler, Brady Zipsy all returning. You got tight ends and Hunter DeWall and Caden Hoffman coming back. And then, like we said, the running back contingent of Milnes, Loomis, and Probst. And then defensively, you're going to have some guys returning there, which include the guys that we've already mentioned, along with Austin Collis at defensive line, Eli Ferris at defensive back, and then some of these guys we already said are going to be two-way players. And one of the fun notes that I got from Coach Janicki was, Mickey Probst has been a 3-year starter, or will be a 3-year starter, and he wanted to make a note that Probst picked off Cooper Hoffman not once, but twice his freshman year when they played Dupec. So, and Mickey is one of those top players. Offensively, Forreston's going to need to see a big tick in his production, but defensively, he's definitely been a staple defensively for the Cards over the past 2 seasons.
Need a logo, website, or standout graphic design? Check out Nick at Volkert Design, your go-to for high-impact branding and design solutions. With over 20 years of experience serving businesses across Northern Illinois and Chicagoland, Nick delivers best-in-class websites, logos, and graphics that get noticed. Whether you're a startup or an established name, Volkert Design brings your vision to life. Visit volkert.design today to see the difference top-tier design makes.
All right, now here comes one of the teams we're excited to talk about, the Lena Winslow Panthers. Lena Winslow obviously was in the state title game just a season ago for the whatever it's been. What is it? 5 consecutive seasons now?
Ooh, you're putting me on the spot. I'd have to look.
It is. But, they come off of a big loss, 58-14, to Althoff Catholic. I believe that is their biggest playoff loss in program history. And the 58 points that they allowed tied the Class 1A state record for the most points scored in the game that Lena Winslow had set in the 2019 state championship game. So how ironic is that?
Yeah.
But they finished with a 13-1 season for the second year in a row, which culminated in their second consecutive state championship game loss. But where Coach Aaron is excited about is they have a lot of experience coming back, and I'm sure teams around the state do not want to hear Lena Winslow or all these kids coming back.
Real quick before we move along, I want to say that, a lot of talk was had on last year's state championship games, and a lot of it was after all of the results were in, and there was a lot of talk about that 1A game and the result. And if we're being honest, there was a lot of negativity about kind of the way it played out based on Althoff Catholic being in 1A. I got to give credit and a ton of respect to Coach Aaron and to the players. They handled all of it after the game with total class and total respect. They took the loss, they owned up to it, they said the right things, and they handled it the right way. You were there too. You heard the post-game comments from Lena Winslow and the players and the coaches, and I was really impressed, because it would have been easy to go down kind of the negative road, and it wouldn't have benefited anybody. It wouldn't have helped anything. And I give them a ton of credit for the way they handled all of it.
Well, strong programs have great leadership, and you see that. These guys talk exactly how Coach Aaron talks. So obviously they're picking up that style of leadership, and, they want to be a team and a program that is well respected in all facets, not just wins on the football field. And, that speaks volumes, like you said, to Coach Aaron and his staff of building boys into men. And like you said, owning up to the fact, hey, yeah, they were a great team. Deer Hill was a phenomenal athlete. Great experience to play against a guy of that caliber. And that's, Coach Aaron even stated in his presser that, he didn't really want to talk about Althoff. He wanted to stay focused on what his team did and what they've accomplished. And he had a group of graduating seniors that had never not been in a state championship game, which was huge for the program. It really was. How many seniors get a state that they played every game physically possible?
Every game possible.
High school, great.
It's crazy.
That in itself was phenomenal, right?
Yep.
So even despite the loss and the adversity around that and the talk of Catholics versus privates and all that BS garbage that we're already starting to hear now in the preseason, despite all that, he, like you said, he stayed positive with what was going on. The players did a great job of speaking to the difficulties and challenges of playing against a team like Althoff had last year. But they took from it. And one of the great answers I recall hearing is, yeah, I need to get in the weight room and work harder next year.
Yeah. For a team that already is accomplished in, how much they hit the weight room. So, yeah. So anyway, we can look ahead to this year, but I wanted to point that out because we were both there and we both, I think we're both left impressed. So,
yeah, no, it was great. And, that just, like you said, leadership exudes into the players, and the players showed out in that instance of what their leadership's been doing for them. Obviously, Coach Aaron is a man of very few words, and, didn't really have a whole lot to say, but as many small schools, they need to stay away from the injury bug. And, one of the concerns that he had was team speed and depth, and Mitch kind of made a play on that in the View from the West NUIC preview show. He goes, I don't know if Coach Rickles really needs to work on team speed. They're just coming off of a lot of success at the state track meet. But obviously, Coach Aaron definitely wants to work on speed and depth. And, he's not wrong in part as far as the depth part, but speed-wise, they definitely got a lot of speed on this team.
Yeah. Well, they got the speed in the form of Alex Schlichting, who really impressed us last year running the ball. But I think what really makes this offense so dynamic is the combination of Schlichting running the ball and then Aiden Wild running the ball. You're going to get beat up the middle, or you're going to get beat with speed around the outside. It's just, it's the perfect, it's the way you want it drawn up, right? If you're leading an offense, you want those type of athletes to give you that different look every time you run the ball. And they really did it really effectively a year ago, and I think they'll jump right back into it again.
Yeah, I mean, you take a look at where Alex Schlichting's at. He enters this season at 2,187 yards. If he can have a season that replicates what he just did last year, where he ran for just shy of 2,000 yards, you're looking at another Lena Winslow running back to join the likes of Ravion Valentine and a Sean Ormiston among the elite of the elite running backs with over 4,000 rushing yards in their career. So
Yeah.
that in itself is going to be huge for Lena Winslow, for Alex Schlichting himself. But then, like you said, you throw Aiden Wild into that punch. Now you can't just focus on stopping Schlichting. You got to figure out how to stop Wild. And then you're going to see Kobe Kearns come in, and he's going to pick up even more carries from what he had a season ago, filling the roles that are now empty from Jimmy Goebel and Jalen Rakowska. So now he's going to get more. And it just makes a much larger dynamic, like you stated, of who are you going to stop? You know, a couple years ago when Lena Winslow went to state, they relied heavily on Gage Dunker, which ultimately probably led to some of that demise in that state championship loss to Camp Point Central. Last year they kind of answered that, and this year they're going to come back with a lot of the same stuff.
Yep. And I think when you look at this offense, it's led by an experienced quarterback as well. And I think you can speak to it. You've seen a lot of Lena Winslow offenses that maybe the quarterback isn't the focal point, but it certainly is important because, again, we talked about that coach on the field. And, hey, like we were just joking, in a text thread this week about Lena Winslow came out and was passing last year early in the season against Morrison and caught some people off guard. So I will say always be ready for it because Coach Aaron will call it up if it's there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's true. I mean, there a few years ago, well, I guess it was quite a few years ago now because it was when Ravion Valentine was still playing. He would be the running back coming out on the backside going down the hash. And you knew if you saw that happening, there's probably a good chance they were faking a double dive to the one side to allow him to escape out the backside looking for that home run ball.
Yep.
Well, then, like 2 years later, they were doing the same thing, but now it was with the tight end between Chrisman or Bruce running those seam routes going down the middle. So what my point is you're right. They're looking for opportunities to throw the ball, and they will do so when they have to. They're not going to do it all the time, but it's going to come in different forms. They don't just sell out on one play, but when they find something that works, it's coming. And we've seen that happen. I mean, what was it? I think it was the 2019 state championship game against Central A&M. Their first touchdown was a pass to Chrisman, and that caught Central A&M like, what are we doing?
Yep.
We got to stop Ormiston. We got to stop Bruce. And now you're throwing the ball? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
But, like you said, they're going to call it up at different times. You're just not you're just not knowing when it's coming. And, against Morrison last year was Miles Mann, who caught those touchdown passes, his only touchdowns of the year. And Cash Lessman threw 5 touchdown passes on the year. And like you said, 2 of them came in that first game against Morrison.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that was a fun banter back and forth there. But, with Miles Mann back, you also have Jaden Schubert back. They're going to move him from offensive line into a tight end position as well. And then offensive line-wise, you have Gannon Dunker, Preston Schultz, and Duncan Neville all returning. And I got some great news for you, Greg.
Yeah.
Gannon Dunker has received a junior day visit to your favorite school, Northwestern.
I love, man, get me some Dunker football at Northwestern. I love it, man. That would be awesome.
I thought you'd be excited to hear that.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's smart enough to get into Northwestern, which is even better.
Well, yeah, I wasn't, so
But I think deep down, he is an Iowa guy.
I
I mean,
wondered about that. That was going to be, I didn't want to bring it up because that was my question, you know?
so, it'll be fun. It's exciting to see
Yeah.
Gannon starting to get his turn in the Dunker football boys regime of starting to see what he's got coming in. So, and obviously we're going to expect to see a lot more of that coming his way as the season progresses as well. And obviously these guys got quite a few guys getting some looks. I know Aiden Wild has gotten some looks as well from different schools, and it's always fun to see guys come from your area that go on to the next level and play.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's exciting.
Defensive wise, this may be one of we talked about EPC's linebacking core being one of the strongest. Lena Winslow's may be one of the fastest, with Miles Band, Kobe Kearns, and Aiden Wild shoring up those linebacker positions. Again, in the defensive backfield, you got Schlichting and Ashton Gerber coming back. And then on the defensive line, where you got Dunker and Schultz as well. And then a couple guys that they're hoping will to fill in some roles would include Aiden Foley on the offensive line, Vander Knoll on the line on both sides of the ball, Merrick Mann, which is Miles's younger brother, and then Mason Kemple on both the offensive and defensive lines as well there. So it should be a very exciting time for Lena Winslow. And, of course, they get to open up their Week 2 game at home against Stockton. So they're going to get a big showdown right out of the gates to open up Rick Aaron Field to the new turf field.
I was going to say, Week 2 is the debut of the new field.
That is.
And it's against Stockton.
Yeah, you better come up for that game, buddy. I think I just booked your Week 2 game for you.
Yo, man, that sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah, that sounds good.
So let's go on to our next team. It's Pat Lower's Fulton Steamers. And, Fulton is coming off of a 4-5 season. They missed the playoffs for the first time since joining the NUIC back in 2021. Coach Lower enters this season just 5 wins away from career win number 100. And if he gets it this season, you're going to see the Steamers playing playoff football once again.
Did you hear our Pat Lower story this offseason?
I did. Mitch goes, I'm pretty sure you probably listened to that show. Yes, Mitch, I listened to that show. It was great. It was great.
Yeah.
I loved it.
So, truth be told, the story goes that in a game against Knoxville way back when, Toby Vallis, now the head coach of Farmington, was a running back, got tackled, and a mysterious linebacker grabbed his shoe off his foot and threw it downfield or threw it to the sideline. Now, Coach Vallis blamed a young Pat Lower, but apparently it's been sorted out. It was actually another defensive back or linebacker on the field. It was not Lower. So the myth, the legend will go on, but it was a not Lower throwing the shoe apparently. But anyway.
Yeah, those Alito Green Dragons back in that day, man, they were something, weren't they?
Yeah. Yep.
Jeez. I mean, they had some good teams back when Lower played, and then when Cully Welter took over that program, he just took it to a whole nother level. And
hey, you're not kidding. Yeah, absolutely.
They were a lot of fun to watch, that's for sure.
Let me tell you real quick what's crazy. So last year in week 1, I went to Fulton versus Forreston, and then I drove down the road from Fulton to Morrison to see Morrison versus Lena Winslow. Now, going week 1 last year, the year before, all 4 of those teams had been in the playoffs. And I thought, man, I'm catching some great week 1 games. And here we go. It turns out one of those teams was a playoff team, and that was Lena Winslow. And the rest missed it. It's just wild. It's just weird. And it shows you kind of the competitiveness of this conference. Fulton was one of those teams that I thought certainly would be in the mix for the playoff run, and they fell just short. So anyway, we can get into it. But I just thought that was weird.
No, it was. You're right. I mean, I was talking to Mitch, and we'll talk about it probably when we get to the Morrison segment. But, I was probably one of the ones that was definitely. I know I was high on Morrison. I just thought that they would have a lot to go off of, and here they are coming from the track to the NUIC, and man, I even project them to be like 8-1 or 7-2. I think it was 8-1, and
Yeah.
it's like, man.
Yeah.
But hey, like you said, football happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, Morrison had a couple things that happened on him, but let's talk about Fulton. I don't think Fulton really cares to hear about Morrison, right?
That's true. True.
Um, so, Coach Lower is very excited. Obviously, they've had a great offseason in the weight room. They've been working on their speed times as well. They're continuing to get stronger and faster day by day. He's very excited with the fact that he's got a good mix of veteran players and young players. And when you take a look at it, he's got like 14 guys coming back from a season ago. And one of those guys is going to be Landon Liu, the wide receiver defensive back who got injured and unfortunately had to miss a good portion of the season due to that injury. But he'll be back and hopefully fill in a big role at the wide receiver spot where he can make some big plays downfield. And with that, Braden Myers coming back at quarterback. Obviously, he filled in late in the year for an injured Dom Kramer, but then he just went off, throwing for 567 yards, 11 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about it's one thing to really bust out, and play really well, have the big numbers, the touchdowns, but that kind of ratio, as you step in as a backup quarterback is great, right? I mean, it played really well when they really needed him to, and I think that kind of spark builds a ton of momentum here headed into this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you add Mason Keeble, who will be more of the feature back this year. Jonah Lutz is going to be stepping into a bigger role at running back this year, too. So that should give them some more opportunities to be able to run the ball. And then one of the things I've noticed about Coach Lower's teams is, they heavily depend on a lot of play action to get their passing game going, which allows them to be more multi-dimensional. And, having the opportunity to have a quarterback that can be a dual threat quarterback along with 2 key running backs returning, and then you have your big 6'4" wide receiver returning, creates a lot of opportunities there. And I'll be honest, I am excited for Steamer Ball this year.
Yeah, I mean, with the diversity they have on offense here, you add in the line play, Wyatt Becker, Landon Boonstra, and Cody Shipper all return. So, there's experience across the line. There's some experience and some, high-end, some talented experience coming back here. I think, yeah, we could, again, it's just, we keep saying we could see this team improve. We could see this team improve. It's going to be a battle week in and week out because losses got to come somewhere, but I'm excited for a lot of these teams and what they can do.
Yeah, definitely. And on the defensive side of the ball, you have linebackers Matthew Connor and Ben Housengay returning. Defensive backs is where they're going to have a lot of depth there with Myers, Lutz, and Lou all back. And then Keeble back on the defensive line. And then they have Eddie Quinage, who is the younger brother of Andy Quinage, the kicker from a couple years ago. He's back at kicker, so that gives them another opportunity to have a scoring threat on the field in the form of their kicker, which most schools in the NUIC don't have that advantage. Fulton does.
Yeah, I mean, all 3 phases of the game, like they bring experience back. So you gotta feel good about that if you're a Steamer fan.
A big name I'm looking forward to hearing in the receiving game specifically is going to be Evan Folk. He's one of the many guys that Coach Lower is looking to step up into a bigger role. I think at wide receiver and at defensive back, he could bring another dimension to that Steamer offense. And then obviously provide another defensive back with some speed to help fill that hole in that defensive backfield will be huge. Obviously, he's going to be looking at guys like Gavin Snyder and Wiley Bladsill to help fill in on the offensive line. And then he's got a couple other guys here that he's got listed. Probably one of my favorite names on this list, though, is Teague Bray. I don't know why. That name just stands out to me. He's a guy that's going to be looking at opportunities at both running back and linebacker. And I don't know, that name just sounds like a linebacker name to
There
me.
you go. Yep. Sometimes it's all in the name, man. Yep.
Yeah, like it. So,
Yeah.
team, good luck this year. I hope you can fill in some big shoes and help those Steamers to some wins.
Thinking about buying or selling a home? Trust the team that knows this area better than anyone. Best Realty. Whether you're looking for your first home, upgrading for more space, or relocating, Best Realty is committed to making the process smooth, honest, and successful. With deep roots in our local communities and a track record of results, Best Realty isn't just in the business of homes, they're in the business of helping families take the next step. Best Realty. Local experts, real results, real people. Call today and move with confidence.
All right, the Galena Pirates bring in a new era under Coach Kyle Knight. Obviously, Ed Freed departed after last season. He's guided the Pirates football program since 2003, which included 2 state championships both in 2003 and 2007. Coach Knight is going to inherit a talented and experienced team with many seniors that have been 2 to 3 year starters. They're going to be relying on their juniors and sophomores to step up to fill in these open roles. Last year they were 7-5, losing in the quarterfinals 37-21 to Leroy. That game they had to travel down to Leroy to play. Ironically, it's the same team that they had played before in a state championship game where they won.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
A lot of history between those two teams. I didn't get to make that game, but I was able to make the trip down to Leroy the very next week
Yep.
for the semifinals. And I tell you what, that while that experience for Galena didn't pan out, the trip to Leroy and the fan environment down there was something to behold. I'm pretty sure I was the second to last car to leave the field that day. It felt like small school football.
Yeah.
We're always talking about places like Stockton or Milledgeville as being great settings for small school football because you can get so close to the field. That's exactly how Leroy felt. And, those semifinal games that you hear a lot of people talk about from yesteryear when, you had all these people 5 rows deep around the entire field and parked out past the cornfield. That was the environment Leroy brought last year. It was amazing.
Yeah, it seemed like it was a really special year, the whole season for Leroy. And so, yeah, really cool for you to be able to make that trip because I was seeing some photos from you and seeing some videos from you, and we were seeing stuff on other social media. It looked great, looked cool. That's what it's all about. That's the fun stuff.
It is. Galena is going to be playing on the road this year for their home games, about 15 minutes north in Wisconsin at Southwestern High School in Hazel Green, which is the home of Southwestern East Dubuque. And with that, Galena's obviously going through a renovation. On your show, Mitch had asked what was going on. Apparently, something about some solar field, something or other,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Come to find out, I did some digging because I was interested. I was really intrigued. I know that they've been tearing it up. I knew that they were putting in a new gymnasium, but it's a $30 million project. And I had a feeling that they might be putting in a track, but now it's confirmed. They are putting in a track. They're also going to be putting in a turf field. And they're obviously going to be reconstructing the old part of the high school, which dates back to 1957. That's the part that famously or infamously, however you want to look at it, is where the broadcast booth is, which is basically a classroom that overlooks the football field that a lot of your broadcasters sit in during games to do the games. They're redoing that section and then, of course, adding on the new gymnasium. So it's a huge project. So Galena will return home. I think they're expected to return back to play in 2026. something online said 2027, but that could just be AI BS. Who knows? Don't trust that all the time.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
from what I've been told, it's supposed to be 2026. They're only moving away for the 1 year while they finish up the construction of this place.
yeah.
So that's going to be very exciting for Galena as we look forward to that too.
Yeah, I mean that place is cool, and I haven't been there very often, but I was actually there just last year, and we've talked about how it's kind of a unique setup, and it's a cool atmosphere, and that's gonna be when it's all fixed up now and shiny and nice and new. That's gonna be a really cool place to catch a game.
Oh man, I can't wait. I really
Yeah,
hope, by the looks of it, it looks like it's going to stay relatively the same, just with a newer look to it. Because, like I said on your show, like to me, that is one of the most iconic places to play. I've always felt, and it could be just because I played against Galena in their heyday when they were just the team to beat every year.
yep,
Um, but it was always the most intimidating place to play for, in my opinion, and still is one of the most intimidating places to play across the state of Illinois in small school football, simply for the fact that to take the field, you got to walk through the home crowd just to get onto the field. And I hope
yeah,
that they keep it that way. I really do, because it adds to the mystique of the place.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, for sure.
Um, Looking at Galena, obviously they're going to return a great dual threat player in Roman Romer. He's going to be back at quarterback again. He's rushed for 816 yards in his career with 14 touchdowns. He's thrown for another 1,200 plus yards as well. So he is going to be the player that Galena and Coach Knight are looking to build up around. With that, Owen Hafel returns at the wide receiver position. He is going to look to establish his name among the NUIC greats in the receiving categories as he enters this season with 672 career receiving yards. Um, and then if you take a look at that offensive line with Gus Knack, Juan Durantes, and Travis Temperley all returning as well, they got a good offensive group where, yes, they have some holes to fill, but the key positions are there.
Yeah, I would agree. I was really impressed when I saw Roman Romer play in their game against Marquette last year, their playoff win, and really impressed with their defensive effort all the way around. We'll talk a little bit about their defense here in a minute, but yeah, I just think that they have some pieces there coming back that I think it brings a lot of excitement. And man, who knew? Not to get us sidetracked, who knew a year ago or when I went to that Marquette versus Galena game that it would be the last game for Coach Yupst and it would be the second to last game, the last time I would see Ed Freed coach a game. Both of
Yeah,
them, ended up stepping down at the end of the year. So just kind of crazy, two coaching legends, really. I mean, for what they have done over the course of their careers. So,
yeah, definitely. I mean, um, obviously, I would imagine Coach Yupst, if he's not already, will be in the Hall of Fame, and I could see the same thing happening at some point for Coach Freed as well,
yep,
based
yep,
off of the legacy careers that they've had at both
yeah,
their respective programs. And of course, Yupst goes even further back to multiple programs
yeah.
at different levels at that, too, because he wasn't always a head coach either.
Yeah. Yep.
Uh,
So, yeah, I was impressed with them defensively as well against in that Marquette game. They really shut down what Marquette was going to do. An offense that had put up a ton of points the week before in a playoff win against Rushville Industry. So, I think that it's testament to this defense.
Yeah, I remember us having that dialogue because you were very impressed with how well Marquette was able to go on the road to Rushville Industry, put up 44 points in that game, come back, and I remember you talking about it. We had talked about it, but then you had said it on one of your shows as well that you were excited to see how they would play against Galena. And then when Galena came and really laid the hammer down on the crew,
Yep.
you had stated how excited you were about the Galena team you just saw play.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that carries over, with a lot of these pieces back into this year. So,
Yeah, and some key newcomers to look for. Drew Koenigs. He's actually a senior going out for football this year. Looking for him to be tight end, defensive line. Sam Amaya, Colton McCartney, Dylan Belkin, and Jack Vincent. All those guys looking to get into different roles, whether it be running back, wide receiver, defensive back, linebacker. So it Coach Knight's got himself set up with an opportunity. Like we said, it's easy to see. Now, Galena is a team that we're already talking about state ranking wise, things like that. But can they return to that level? They have the pieces there. They have a new coach in place, and I believe Coach Knight again, similar to Coach Demas at Dupec, has a lot of the same faces coming back on the sideline, so it shouldn't be too much of a shakeup of leadership there either.
Yep. Yeah, I think that this is one of those teams that we'll maybe talk about at the end that I think will be in the mix, right? And they're like every other team, they're going to have to prove it week in and week out. But I think that you saw what they did last year, and they bring some of those players back. And so they're one of the teams that I would consider, if they do what we would expect, they should end up near the upper end of the conference. But maybe we'll save that for the very end. We'll talk a little bit more.
There you go. Let's move over to the home of Mitch, the Morrison Mustangs. Obviously, the Mustangs entered the 2025 season following a lot of hype heading into that first year in the NUIC, like we discussed earlier. But the end result was a 3-6 record, not making the playoffs, losing the wooden shoe to Fulton in Week 9. On top of that, we just heard in your guys' preview show with Ty on the Track that Rylan Alvarado has transferred to Newman. So that is a key loss, in my opinion, for the Mustangs. But one of the things that Coach Vandermeide is excited about is the fact that the Mustangs are still going to have a lot of speed, specifically in that backfield. They will need to find an offensive line or some people on the offensive line, which they do have some key returners there, to help exploit that speed. Because like I stated in your guys' preview show, it's great to have speed. You want to have it. But if you don't have a line that can block for it, the speed really doesn't matter all that much.
Yeah, and I think we kind of saw that, I think, play out a little bit last year for Morrison. I think that the holes weren't there, or the holes weren't big enough for long enough to really create, any sort of push. And I think that that's where it negated that speed. It slowed it down. And so for as excited as we, were about Morrison last year, I think we saw it didn't play out. It just never really flowed like they thought it would. Can you bounce back this year if you maybe get that a little bit more experience on the line? Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, you have two of the fastest guys across the entire state in your backfield in Brady Anderson and Levi Milder. Obviously, Anderson's just coming off of a 100-meter state championship win. Milder won the 200-meter, and then they both combined on some relay state championship teams that culminated in a team state championship for Morrison just this past spring.
Yeah. Well, we saw it real quick. We saw it a couple years ago in the playoff game against Fulton before they were, once again, conference rivals in the NUIC. That playoff game, we saw Brady Anderson is a game changer. He is absolute, on one play, he can flip the whole dynamic of a game. And we didn't see that as much last year in the regular season. So I think that's the question is, man, can you get that back? And I think that the talent's there, right? It's just a matter of finding the holes for him and finding the space for him and Levi Milder to do it.
Well, that's just it. I mean, you had Donnie Reevy at fullback. He ended up tearing his ACL, getting injured, missing the rest of the season. He was going to be the replacement for Sauce when Sauce graduated. And yeah, like you said, it just kind of snowballed on him because, that opening game against Lena Winslow, while it went in Lena Winslow's favor like 32-6, that game was a lot closer than that 32-6 score.
Yep.
I think it was 16-0 at halftime. but Morrison had been moving the ball through the
Correct.
first half,
Mm-hmm.
which negated Lena Winslow from adding on to their score that they already had. Granted, they were getting ready to go up 3 scores. They fumbled. Morrison took that fumble almost 98 yards, but then I can't remember if they turned it back over or if they had a turnover and downs. Either way, they drove the length of the field, but they couldn't convert it into points.
Yep.
And then they come out in the second half and they get a touchdown to bring it within 10 points. And it was 16-6 heading into the fourth quarter before Lena Winslow added those final 2 scores to make the score appear larger than what the game had really played out to be.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And then as the season played out, like you said, some key injuries, and then it just didn't work the way, that maybe Morrison or maybe we thought it would work for Morrison. But, we're talking about up front, talking about the line play. They do return Hunter Miller shown, Caleb Carroll, Noah Robbins. So there's some pieces there. If you took your lumps last year, you learn how to get better. Like if they can play as a unit and, build some strength and some, power up front, maybe that goes, a little bit of a ways to flipping the script here.
Yeah, and defensively at linebacker, Robbins, you have returning in there again. Colin Rankus is a name that we heard a lot about last year on the defensive side of the ball. He's back. And then your defensive backfield with Anderson Milder and Carson White is a very experienced group there. So, like you said, you got some pieces there. Morrison's a little light on numbers this year too, which is kind of odd being that they're one of the biggest schools in the conference. And, in talking with Mitch and even with our friend Greg Pruitt, it's kind of odd to kind of see numbers down at Morrison, which is such a football type school as well.
Yeah. I mean, I do remember, so they had their 2 state championship runs in, I believe, 2009 and 2011.
Yep.
And then there were a few years in there following that where the success wasn't there, and I think numbers did dip, pretty low for a while, and it rebounded a little bit. But yeah, they did battle some numbers several years ago, and then they kind of came back up, and so yeah, that's tough to hear. It's a tough reality for a lot of schools, a lot of smaller schools, but you hope that they can stay relatively injury-free if they don't have that depth and, try to maximize the potential that's here.
Yeah, you are correct. I did forget about that. During the 2010s, after that 2011 state championship team, they kind of went dormant for like 6 or 7 years before they
there was some
get back up.
Yep.
So, obviously, like we said, both sides of the ball, the line is going to be a huge force, a focus for Morrison to get that speed into open field. And if they can do that, you're going to find this Morrison team getting a lot more success than the 3-6 season we saw them have a season.
Are you looking to raise funds for your program? Look no further than Leading Edge Fundraising, helping teams and programs raise more with less hassle. Whether you're gearing up for a new season or trying to hit a financial goal, Leading Edge has the tools, products, and experience to get you there. From youth clubs to varsity programs, they've helped teams across Illinois maximize profits and minimize stress. Want fundraising that actually works? Go with the local experts who know how to win off the field too. Contact Brandon at 563-514-1647. Leading Edge Fundraising, raising the standard. Reach out today and take your program to the next level.
All right, Greg. We're on to our last team of the night, and it's an exciting one, in my opinion. No better way to hold this team to last. The Stockton Blackhawks. Obviously, they return quite a few starters. I think it's actually the most starters across all of Class 1A. They have 10 guys back on both sides of the ball. Will that experience lift Stockton back to the top?
That is a great question. That is a loaded question firing out because there's a lot of talent here, but I think we'll talk a little bit about it. I saw they were close in their game against Lena Winslow in the regular season. And then in the playoffs, I was at that game where it was slow in the beginning and they were kind of going back and forth, or they were hanging around, and then it just blew open for Lena Winslow. I mean, it was the air deflated out of Stockton that day when Lena Winslow kind of took control of it. So now, that being said, those guys, they learn from it. You either win or you learn, right? There's two options that happen on a field. So you learn from it. These guys bounce back. They're here now, and man, I can't imagine a team that's more motivated than what this Stockton team is, knowing that, hey, we were all here a year ago. Let's get the job done now.
Well, that's just it. It's been 13 years since Stockton has beat Lena Winslow. Back in their last run to the state championship game in 2012, they had to get through Lena Winslow to get there. That is the last time that they beat Lena Winslow. So it's been a long time of this rivalry going in Lena Winslow's favor, albeit most of the time by pretty significant score differentials. But at the same time, like that mega 2019 Lena Winslow team, one of the teams that kept them from a running clock that year was Stockton. And that was a big surprise because a lot of people, myself included, expected a running clock in that game, and it never transpired. Like you said here, we got a lot of experience returning. Coach Sean Downey says this is the deepest team he's had in his entire tenure at Stockton. They're not overly big, but we've seen it on social media. We know about it. We've heard about it. They've gained a lot of strength in these kids over the last 3 years with heavy strength training and conditioning. And he hopes this team takes the field wanting to be the most physical team on the Friday nights. If they don't, and this is from Coach Downey, so it's kind of, it's not funny. It's real. But if they don't become the most physical team on Friday nights, then they're going to be average at best in his opinion. And obviously, as a coach, you don't really expect that to happen. He's confident, but I think at the same time, he's trying to stay humble to keep his team humble. They know what they have, but they haven't proved anything yet until you actually crawl to that top shelf and make yourself at the top of the league. That's the expectation. They know it's not going to be easy to climb that hill.
I think you had a great point in our podcast with Mitch in saying that of any program that really understands what Lena Winslow does and does so well, it's a school like Stockton because they co-op in wrestling, correct?
Yes.
So they see it. They're with these kids, pulling in the same direction in that program, and they split for this football programs, but they know who each other is. They know how hard the other one works. And so I thought that was a great point. Very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's true. When you can take the field of play, and that's where I find Lena Winslow finds a lot of success, much like Dakota did in the 2000s and Galena did in the 90s. When you take the field and you see Lena Winslow across or whatever emblem Lena Winslow has, I guess it's Lee Win on the back of the shirts now with the little panther head here. But when you see that field, that helmet, those uniforms take the field, if you're taking that field already knowing that you lost the game before the ball even got kicked off.
Yep.
And that's what Stockton is very good at not doing. Now, obviously, it has not culminated in the wins, but yes, they are not afraid of a Lena Winslow team. And a team that's not afraid is a team that can play dangerous. And, we hear that phrase all the time, a trap game. To me, Stockton and Lena Winslow is a trap game for either team, really. Because, Lena Winslow this year knows that Stockton is the team to beat. Obviously, every team in the conference is saying that Lena Winslow is the team to beat until somebody knocks them off their throne, which is also very much true. But nobody is is going to expect Stockton to be so-so.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that Stockton is now a team to be a threat, and they're not sneaking up on anybody anymore. They have arrived. The big show is here. Now it's time to put that show on.
Yeah, absolutely. I am really excited to see this team take the field. When you talk about, as you said in your notes here, the three-headed monster, right? The backfield of Mark Detweiler, Jack Menzendijk, and Carter Blair. Look at all of them were right around 1,000 yards, so speaks to the depth that Coach Downey talks about, right? There is a lot of, options here to hand the ball off and to keep bodies fresh throughout a game and throughout a season.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely, this rivals Lena Winslow's returning depth at running back and makes this one of the most potent rushing attacks in the entire state of Illinois this year coming back. On top of that, at quarterback, you have Noah Larson returning for his second year as the starting quarterback. Had a late season freak injury that knocked him out for a few games last year after a practice injury that was just weird in itself and how it all happened, but it busted up his face to a point where he couldn't even put a mouthpiece in his mouth, which caused him to miss a couple games. Granted, they weren't necessarily games that weren't going to go in Stockton's favor, but when you sit out a couple games, you kind of get out of that rhythm. But he'll be back, and then at tight end, you have Eli Larson back. He's the leading receiver for Stockton coming back, 295 yards and 5 touchdowns, which again, it's not like it's a huge amount, but any amount that you can get through the air in a game that is really planned for the rushing attack is going to be huge and gives them another element of surprise. And then you feature 2 state championship caliber wrestlers along with Eli Larson at tight end with Maya Luke and Oliver McPeak on that line. You're just adding more strength and athleticism to an offensive line. So like Coach Downey says, we're not overly big, but we're very strong. And I'll tell you what, and anybody that knows football, especially at the small school level, will tell you, I'll take a couple wrestlers because they're going to know how to compete one-on-one to win those battles, and they're going to create some problems there on the front line.
I think wrestlers that play football just have a different motor, right? They're just high energy. They're just on. That's always the sense I get, right? Like they just get after it because that's what wrestling is. Like it's a battle in the trenches one-on-one, and you translate that to a football field.
Right, exactly. And, Stockton's probably going to come out in a 3-5 defense, similar to what we saw last year, which kind of resembles a 5-3 defense at the same time. And with that, you got a lot of linebackers there with Detweiler, Maya Luke, Eli Larson. And then you're looking at another guy that is going to come in and make a big splash, at least that they're hoping, is Morgan Hass. And then Aiden Larson there too at linebacker. So there you go. You have not just strength, but like Coach Downey stated, you have speed there at your linebacker positions. And then you add into it with Mason Henderson on the defensive line. The best part defensively, though, is that defensive backfield. You have everybody back. Carter Blair, Harrison Bauer, Noah Larson, and Reese Demeter. I mean, it cannot get much better for a team like what Stockton has with the guys that they have returning this season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think over the course of the time that I've done our show, teams that have returned double digits on both sides of the ball, right? Like, I think last year or a couple years ago, Farmington returned like 9, and that's a bigger school with a lot more, a bigger program, but for them to return 10 is remarkable. And it was a talented group of 10, and just to have that experience along with that talent, I think that's what adds up to a team that has that potential Can somebody knock off Lena Winslow is the question we've asked for the past, 4, 5 years, 6 years. And I think that, that team has changed over the years. I would say this is the year that Stockton is the answer. That if somebody can do it, this would be the team that could do it.
I 100% agree. And obviously I made that mention on your show with Mitch that, this is the team that can make some noise, provided that they can get past Lena Winslow. Now, that's also one of the things that probably works to Stockton's advantage, at least to start the season, is that they're going to see Lena Winslow in week 2.
Yep.
But, and it's a big but, that's probably the worst time that you really want to see Lena Winslow, because now they have 7, 8 more weeks to prepare for you a second time around. I mean, granted, both teams have that, but I've seen it too many times over the years where somebody gets Lena Winslow early in the season, they beat Lena Winslow, all of a sudden they're on a new high because Lena Winslow, like you said, for the past decade, has been the team to beat. And once they get past that, they're like, okay, we got this. And then they get into the playoffs, they meet back up with Lena Winslow, and the roles reverse. And, that late 2010s era with that rivalry with Dakota and Lena Winslow was awesome. Dakota kicked the crap out of Lena Winslow in week 1 in back-to-back years just to return the favor in round 2 of the playoffs. And then in 2011, they met up in week 9. Dakota won that game. 2 weeks later, Dakota won again to win their last state title back in 2011. And Lena Winslow was the favorite to win state that year. And, right now, Lena Winslow's the odds-on favorite to get back to state and win state, which would be a record 7th time in Class 1A. And Stockton is that other NUIC team that has the best opportunity to not just knock them off, but then themselves harness that into a deep playoff run as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, it's a bummer. Part of me obviously thinks it's a bummer that they meet in week 2. But then maybe, glass half full, I'll say, is in week 2, you're almost assured, I shouldn't, guarantee anything, but both teams should be almost fully healthy, right? I mean, unless you have unless something really unfortunate happens in week 1 or in the next couple weeks of practice, hopefully in week 2, it's their strength versus your strength. There's no excuses, no injuries, no nothing. I hope that maybe can be the best part of the early season matchup.
Oh yeah. I mean, definitely expect that to happen. Not Lena Winslow. Stockton opens up with Benton Scales Mount Schulzberg, a team that they blew out of the water a season ago in week 2. They get them in week 1 this year. And I would be willing to bet that you're going to see the same results. I think that Stockton wins that game big. And it's kind of like the old Division One AA games before you get into the conference play season. This is their tune-up game against a lower tier team before they have to go and actually put everything on the line against a Lena Winslow team that they're going to try to want to beat for the potential to win an NUIC conference crown.
Yep. Yeah, there you go.
All right, Greg, so obviously we went through that. That wraps up all the teams that we have on the preview. Taking a look at how you feel the conference will lay out, and what's your thoughts? How do you think some of these teams are going to land?
I think it really is a conference that is Lena Winslow and Stockton, I think, are fighting for the championship, the conference championship. And then I think it's a lot in the middle. that are all fighting for not just 5 wins. I think that they're going to be fighting for potentially second, third, but they're fighting for playoff spots, right? I think that you're going to have several teams get to 5 and on up the way, but it's going to be a battle. I think you're going to see some back and forth. A team's going to win a big game, and the next week they're going to get beat by somebody else who we would say won a big game. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's going to be a lot of back and forth because there's a lot of parity there in the middle.
There is, and I agree with you. Like you said, there's going to be some teams that will maybe rise back up, like a Fulton or a Forreston, that are typically in that playoff push, could very well see themselves back into that style of play, which only means that another team could fall down. An EPC, a Galena, a Dupec, and while Lena Winslow and Stockton obviously return a great group of kids with probably the most experience out of the entire conference, which is why they're being talked about as the top 2 teams, an injury here or an injury there can change that whole dynamic as well, to where it could lead to different things. Let's hope that doesn't happen, obviously. Like you said, we want to see everybody stay healthy and give us a great show. But, at the same time, injuries happen. You have to account for it at some point. At the same time, you got to try and do whatever you can as a program to keep your kids as healthy as possible, because let's be honest, football's a brutal sport. You're going to hit your bumps and bruises somewhere along the line. But yes, Lena Winslow, in my opinion, just like all of the coaches with the exception to Rick Aaron, Lena Winslow's the favorite. And right there, like a 1B is Stockton. And, Dupec has some things to change, but can they be right there in the conference talk as they have been for the last 3-4 seasons now? I think that they can be, but they're going to have to find some things. I do like I said before, I like what Fulton has. I really like what Forreston has. Forreston has a lot of depth returning, which kind of mirrors what Stockton and Lena Winslow have coming back, but they also missed out on the playoffs. What I do like about that is they are excited. The Cards are excited because they know nobody's going to be watching, so for the first time in 13 years, they might be that team that can actually sneak up on somebody. EPC obviously is going to be there as a team that we could see make another run to the playoffs. When we start to go through what our NUICfootball.com state rankings look like, you're going to hear EPC get called out in that. Can they live up to that is really the big question mark I have with them. They have key pieces, but they got some key roles that they need to fill to fix that. And then, like you said, Morrison and Dakota are the 2 programs that are low on numbers. Obviously, you're at this point in time, Morrison definitely has a little bit more talent availability than what Dakota returns. But can they get back into that mix? It'll be really tough for Dakota, in my opinion, just based off of the numbers and the inexperience that they have. Morrison definitely has a lot more experience with great key guys to work off of that could definitely see them build up as long as they can continue to go week to week and not lose to those teams before they actually hit the field.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I think, like I said, I think that it's Lena Winslow and Stockton that have kind of separated themselves at the chase for the very top. And then I just think that those teams you just mentioned, I think it's a lot of parity, and there's a lot of teams that have a chance to prove themselves, that maybe there's some unknowns from the last couple years, but they have a chance to make themselves a proven commodity in this conference, and that's exciting. That's what we go to the games on Friday nights. Anything can happen on a Friday night. You show up and you play hard and see where you end up. So I'm ready to go. I'm excited.
I know, I am too. I am too. I think, I'm already looking at booking rooms for Illinois State once again. Mitch said that
Yeah.
as long as we get a team to cover, he'll be there. So I'm excited about that because it's always a great time getting Mitch back from Ohio to be here with us. Um,
I just blocked it off in our calendar, the family calendar, so they already know I'm gonna be in Bloomington normal that day. So
yeah. Oh, it's so much fun. And, you know, hopefully we do have a team that is representing our coverage area at state because it obviously is a lot more fun when you can go
yep,
there and have rooting interests as well as just coverage interests. Um,
yep.
it makes the day a lot more fun. And the NUIC once again is in that talk and taking a look at our state rankings. Obviously, we just posted these across social media. I saw that you were able to get them posted on Twitter as well on View from the West website.
Yep.
So looking at Class 1A first, coming in at number one in our polls is Lena Winslow, followed by Camp Point Central, which right now Camp Point Central, much like Lena Winslow, is the talk of the town down in the WIVC. Followed there with Stockton at number 3. GCMS is at number 4. This team at number 5 is one that I'm really intrigued by. They've had past success, but they return a ton, and I mean a ton of kids that I did not even realize that they're returning. That's KZ Westfield.
I
Newman.
I saw that actually in your notes that you submitted to all of us. Yeah, how many returning starters they had. That was one that stuck out to me. You're right.
Newman, out of the Three Rivers, comes in at number 6. Number 7 is Galena. Number 8 is Calhoun. Number 9 is Leroy. And number 10 is Dwight. Dwight coming down from 2A last year as they dissolved their co-op. So it's going to be just Dwight without Gardner South Wilmington. So that'll be interesting to see how Dwight's season moves along there. And then in our teams receiving votes, Anawan Weathersfield, no stranger to this. Arthur Lovington, Atwood Hammond. Brown County making their way back into the mix. They were 4-5 last season, but Coach Tom Little down there has a great group of kids coming back with a lot of experience under their belts. Your alma mater, Greg, the Marquette Crusaders, the crew coming in there, and then Cesar-Valier, as you once told me, is how it's pronounced.
Correct. Yes.
Rounds out our state rankings in Class 1A.
Yeah, a team real quick that I'm looking at that was only receiving votes on your final rankings is Anawan Weathersfield. I think that they were hit with injuries last year early in the season, and that they still made the playoffs, but it kind of derailed what could have been a really good season, a much better season for them. I think that through that, they had a lot of kids get experience that maybe wouldn't have gotten it otherwise, and I think that talent and that experience is back on the field for them. It's a good program. They don't really deviate too much, right? They're always kind of in the mix. I think they'll be a team to watch for.
I agree with you. I mean, Coach Grip does a great job there. And listening to your Lincoln Land preview, it seemed like there's a lot of coaches that are very much in tune with what Anawan Weathersfield can do. It sounded like they do have a lot of key pieces around. And like you said, we didn't get a true opportunity to see all that. I was really hoping to see Zeb Rashid do some big things last year. And unfortunately, Anawan Weathersfield just could not make it all materialize in that realm. But, man, what a great talent he was to watch play. I'm thankful that I did get that one opportunity to see him play when he came up to Lena Winslow. But, the Titans have been there through thick and thin for, it seems like, the last decade now, and they continue to be a team to watch. And I agree with you. I think that the Lincoln Land Conference, while it's kind of digressed in ways, there's been a couple teams that have definitely raised that bar up. And it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out as the season moves forward.
Yep.
Looking in Class 2A, no surprise that our 1 and 2 spots, we have the defending state runner-ups in Maroa Forsyth coming in at number 1, and right behind them are the Vikings of Tri-Valley. Number 3 is Paxton Buckley Loda. Number 4, your Rockridge Rockets. Mitch can wear his Rockridge hat for that one. And then we got Coach Vallis's Farmington Farmers at number 5. I just noticed that the TP Talk down in Johnson City retweeted our stuff because we got Johnson City at number 6. I think it might be the first time they've opened up in our state rankings in the top 10.
Could be.
Number 7 is Nashville. Nashville was in 3A a season ago, but back in 2019 and 2021, they were the Class 2A state runner-up. So a great program the Hornets have down there. Number 8 is Eastland Pearl City. So like we talked about, EPC being one of those teams that is definitely getting preseason recognition based off of what they did last season, what they returned this season. Number 9 is a team that you were high on last year in Seneca. And number 10 is Bismarck, Henning, Rossville, Allen. A team there too that I believe they were undefeated last year. And then they end up losing to Farmington in the quarters. Yeah.
I can't remember. I don't know.
I think it was the quarters. Some teams to watch are some teams that we've heard about before, but some are making a new entrance into the state rankings for the first time in a long time. Westville, Pana, who is under a new head coach now. Mark Ramsey, the Hall of Famer, who used to lead Central A&M and St. Teresa, now takes over the Pana program. Erie Prophetstown, Elmwood Brimfield, a couple teams that you're very familiar with there, Greg. Along with Piatone and El Paso Gridley, rounding out the Class 2A state rankings.
What's interesting for me, real quick, is I think that there's a lot of teams in that top 10 that I think they're going to look different. They got some proving to do. And I think that includes, I've heard that Paxton Buckley Loda, who is good, knocked off Monmouth Roseville in the first round a year ago. I think they're going to look different. I think they had a lot of turnover from graduation. I know that Farmington had a really talented group go through there. Lane Wheelwright, one of our conference players of the year, has graduated. They still returned Jack Gronwald at wide receiver and a couple other pieces in there, but they'll look different. They'll be younger. And Rockridge still has Cullen Schweigen, but they lose some line play and just some real big impact players, Jude Finch, Landon Bull, names like that. So It's just interesting that I think they're deserving to be in this, but they got to prove it. And then we'll have to see where they stack up come, 9 weeks down the road.
Well, and that's one of the things that we noticed last year and we talked about, and even going into this year, the trend still looks the same, where 2A compared to 1A and 3A is probably going to be the weakest classification. But what that does do is exactly what we saw last year. We watched the Chicago Christian team come in after getting smacked around in the first round the year before. They get to state, get that rematch with Maroa Forsyth, who had smacked them around, and then return that favor to them, which really leaves 2A wide open. But those front two runners, Maroa Forsyth and Tri-Valley,
yep,
they're the teams to beat right now. And I've heard some people already make comments. It's Maroa Forsyth and Tri-Valley and everybody else. And, that very well could be the case, but that doesn't mean any one of these teams can't just come up and sneak up on somebody, which makes 2A very vulnerable and a great classification to watch this year.
Yeah, totally agree. Yep, absolutely.
Class 3A, no surprise here. Coming in at number 1 in our NUICfootball.com polls are the Byron Tigers, a team that we were just talking about not too long ago with their matchup coming up with Dupec in week 6. Dupec obviously going to the Big Northern. Byron obviously a state power, a huge state power since the 2017 season. And lo and behold, the team at number 2 is one of those teams that will be in contention, provided that they can get the wins needed to make the playoffs, IC Catholic. Number 3, everybody's favorite, Althoff Catholic. Number 4, Wilmington. Wilmington is a bubble team. I've already seen some comments from some people from the Wilmington area. It'd be great if Wilmington can slide into 2A, where we have seen them win some recent state championships at. They moved back to 3A last year, got to the 3A semifinals before losing to Montini Catholic, who is now back up into 5A where they belong. I mean where they got multiplied to. Wilmington has an enrollment, I think, at 434, and right now our projected cutoff is at 421. So they very well easily could slide down into that Class 2A field. Number 5, last year's runner-up, and probably the home of one of the most comedic Twitter sites, Monticello. They had a lot of fun. Whoever was running that Twitter handle last year, that was a lot of fun. Watching their banner go back and forth. Number 6, out of the same conference, is Tolono Unity. Number 7, the Princeton Tigers. Not surprised there. Coach Pearson has done a phenomenal job. Would you say his record was since he's taken over the Tigers?
You're putting me on the spot, but it's oh geez, I'd have to look it up. They were like they're like 41-8 in like the last like how many years? And then that's not included. That's just including their runs in the semifinals and quarterfinals. Going back a little farther, I think he's won 60-some games at Princeton. And you look at Princeton was a, middle of the road type of program over the years before Ryan Pearson got there. They had a couple playoff runs occasionally, but never sustained success. And what he's done and what he's built them into is remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah, it has. I mean, It is amazing, and like you and Ty had noted, like Princeton has been making some deep runs, quarterfinals, semifinals, but it's always the teams that they're running into, IC Catholic, Montini Catholic, so it's not like they're losing to slugs. They're losing to the top tier talent of the division classification, which speaks volumes to where Princeton is at. Like you guys stated, they're right there at the top of that classification as well. They just have not been able to swing it into a state championship appearance yet.
He's entering his 9th season. He's 68-19 at Princeton. So
I thought that's what you said. Heck,
and then Ty pointed out that like you said, over the past 5 seasons, it's taken a loss to Byron, IC Catholic twice. One of those losses was in overtime, and Montini twice. So they're losing to the best of the best. Now, that's not good enough for Ryan Pearson. I understand, they're very motivated to change that narrative. But I think when you look around, it's like, okay, to your point, like they're losing to some heavy hitters. One of these years, like, they're going to get that matchup. They're going to get over that hump.
Yeah, it's been a fun run. I remember making a trip to Princeton in 2015. They made the quarterfinals that year under Jesse Snyder, who is now on the Lena Winslow staff, before Pearson took over. And that year they lost to IC Catholic in the quarterfinals, and IC Catholic did not win state that year. Bishop McNamara did, but just an unbelievable run Princeton has put on for pretty much the better part of the last decade.
Yeah.
Number 8, St. Joseph Ogden, no surprise there. They come out of that same Illini Prairie Conference as Tolono Unity and Monticello. Number 9 is Chicago Christian. I did not realize how much talent they lost. They only returned 2 starters off of that state championship team a season ago.
I thought it was a pretty senior-heavy team when we interviewed them after their state championship win. I will say, like, head coach CJ Cesario was awesome. So much fun to talk to. Just such an energetic guy and just fun to be around and, just like soak up his energy. And we had talked to him the week leading up to the state championship game. And then we talked to him afterwards. It was a lot of fun. And I hope the best for him. But again, they're one of those teams that they got a lot of new faces. They'll have to prove it there to stay in the top 10.
Oh, for sure. And, one of the things I saw Coach Cesario say was, we lost a lot of talent, but we're also going to have a lot of talent that we can continue to develop. Our bar has been raised. That's our expectation now, which is great. That's exactly what you want to
Yep.
see. Last year, obviously, being his first year, couldn't have a better first year than winning a state championship.
Yeah.
Now he's got to answer to that, right?
Yep. Yep.
And like you said, the rapport that he built with his fan base last year was second to none. I mean, if you remember, he was down there at state wearing a Letterman's jacket. It was from one of the graduates who had played or graduated like 20 years ago or something like that. It was crazy. But it was cool because you had all of these alumni coming back to watch this team who has had very little success in the playoffs. And then they just go on this dynamic run through a state championship that culminated in that huge blowout win over a team that literally knocked the crap out of them a season before.
Yeah. And can we say, for the record, not all private schools are created the same way, right? Like, this conversation proves it. Like, that's a much different story than the story being told about Montini knocking off Monticello. It just is. It's a different program. This is a program that had not been winning all the time. They'd been getting beat. They'd been not making playoff runs, not even making the playoffs at all. So, like, I think that when a lot of the, private school hate comes out, and I understand, I get annoyed with it too. I see the schools that we see winning and get annoyed, but some of these schools are genuinely good good stories that come out of it. This was one of them. So
yeah, and small school programs. I mean, they did it with guys that had returned, unlike Althoff recruiting 10 new kids to come in and play 1 year. These guys did it with homegrown talent, basically.
Yeah.
And we're able to change the dynamic.
And they're in Chicagoland. They're not exactly out recruiting Mount Carmel or Loyola Academy here, so
right, exactly. I mean, they're in Palos Heights. I mean, we've had Chicago Christian play teams from the NUIC before. EPC's gone in there and had to play a game against Chicago Christian in the playoffs and waxed them. And it's so cool. So cool.
Yeah.
Number 10 is Williamsville from the mighty Sangamo Conference. And then teams to receive votes, Dupec, Richmond Burton, which we knew was going to happen at some point, but here they are now. As they continue to lose enrollment, they're down below the threshold that brings them down into 3A. They were the 2019 4A state champs with that great team that they had. So Coach Knoll is now seeing his Rockets in the Class 3A field. Eureka, Monmouth Roseville, and Bloomington Central Catholic getting bumped up into 3A this year. A fourth Illini Prairie team mentioned in these 3A state rankings.
I was just going to say that, yes, the Class 3A runs through teams like Byron, IC Catholic, Wilmington, but man, can we talk about the Illini Prairie here? I know we've talked about it over the years, but it's worth mentioning that conference is a gauntlet.
Oh, man, it is awesome. I mean, you watched Tolono Unity and St. Joe Ogden. St. Joe Ogden was undefeated last year going into the playoffs. And then they get upset by Tolono Unity, and Tolono Unity had beat Monticello in the regular season, and Monticello upsets Unity to get to state.
In a crazy finish, crazy game. But yeah, I mean, that's what we love, man. And you talked about it way back when we were talking about our NUIC teams. Sometimes that regular season and that playoff matchup, it flips, and that's what happens.
Well, and then you take a look, you had Scott Hamilton as a head coach there. Obviously, Dick Duvall used to be a legendary coach before he passed away as well. Cully Welter is now down at Monticello, where he's already garnered a state title and now a runner-up as well, just to add more to his legacy. And if you go back and look at state history, Tolono Unity and St. Joe Ogden used to be part of the OCAW conference. The OCAW used to feature Maroa, Forsyth, and Tuscola. There was a year
Man.
where those three of those teams were in the 1A, 2A, and 3A state championship teams before the OCOG dissolved.
Yeah.
And,
Wow.
And then, like programs like Unity and St. Joe Ogden, they've been to the state championship team, but have yet to bring home a state championship. And like I said, led by former Hall of Fame coaches, they got it going on down there for sure. Playing right outside the Champaign area, and I really truly got to get down to one of those games. They have some great stadiums down there.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, that gives you a look at what our state rankings are. Class 1A to 3A. I do not have them posted on the website yet. They will be posted yet this week, but we do have them already out on social media. Obviously, you're going to see quite a few changes with NUIC football this year, for the better, of course, which is awesome. And Greg, I really got to say thank you for allowing me the opportunity to not just bring you on, but be able to collaborate with you. Obviously, getting onto this new podcast forum, you were helping to lead and drive that, and it's been a great change for us here.
Yeah, no, I love what you and what Jay have done and what you'll continue to do through football season and beyond. It's been fun to watch, the NUIC football spread to other sports, and just, some things that I'd read an article once in a while, but to see the faces and hear the stories on your podcast has been a ton of fun, throughout the off season. And I give you credit, and I know I've told the story a million times, but like, you're a big reason why I got started in my podcast, because I saw what you were doing for your schools in your area and thought, man, I could talk about teams in the Quad Cities. We could do that, So here we are, and I think it's great to collaborate. We will have you on more than once, more than twice this season. We'll have you on a lot. So just get ready, get your microphone and your voice ready and tuned up.
So let's give a shout out to your live show coming up here on August 17th. I'll let you take over on that.
Yeah, so Sunday, August 17th, we'll do what we're calling the View from the West live kickoff party from the Other Bar in downtown Moline. It's going to be area coaches, area experts, conference insiders such as yourself, Kyle, will be joining us, and we'll be talking about, each conference that we cover. So the Western Big Six on the bigger side of things. We'll talk some Big Northern Football Conference now that we've added that into our mix. The Three Rivers, the Lincoln Land, the Northwest Upstate Illini, and some 8-man talk. We have coaches from all those conferences. Several from each conference is going to be there to kind of represent their school, represent the conference. We're going to have, potential raffles and some prizes you can win, some team t-shirts that you can win, courtesy of our friends at Breedlove Sporting Goods. So it's going to be a lot of fun to be there and just kind of, have that camaraderie to kick off the high school football season. I'm excited. I can't wait to get there and kind of, talk through it all and make some jokes and have a good time.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I mean, I actually earlier today I was looking at the calendar, just trying to figure out how many more days I got left to get stuff prepared. I'm gonna be. I told you I was gonna be wearing a special outfit.
Yeah,
it's a football related outfit.
Okay,
it's kind of movie related, so I'm gonna keep it at that because
all right.
I don't want to give away the surprise.
No,
because I'm really excited about it. It's kind of corny to a point, but at the same time, I think it'll be really cool. But the final piece just came in the mail today, so I'm excited.
Oh man, mailing out for things like this is big time. I love it.
Yes, very much so. I may have to give Carrie some additional funds to buy some extra stuff for herself so I can make things even, but
there you go.
No big deal there. No big deal.
There you go. No, I think it's a perfect compliment to what you've already been doing for your playoff preview show at the end of the regular season. So I felt like this is the great way to complement that. So I'm glad we can make it work.
Oh man, and those playoff shows, they continue to get bigger and bigger every year. That is Absolutely. So much fun. And once again, we'll have what is our ninth annual this year playoff show will be coming on Selection Saturday. So definitely geared up for that, getting ready for that. We'll have the same cast of characters involved, which is always
Love
a
it.
great time. Looking through Class 8 or through Class 3A, 2A, 1A, and of course IFA. But before we get there, we got to get through the regular season first. And like you said, this is the most fun time of the year is right now. And then when we get to Selection Saturday, then the most fun time elevates to a whole nother level, right?
Absolutely.
But, hey, I wore my Cheer for the Hay Bale King shirt for Jennings Dunker.
That's right.
Lee Wynn alum. Excited to see where his path lands in his final season at Iowa. So just a quick shout out there because it's definitely very exciting to see what is going to take place. He's rated number 2 in the country right now as an offensive tackle, which is phenomenal. Very excited to see how his senior year plays out. Hopefully I can get to a game in Iowa City at some point this season
there you go.
to make that opportunity happen. I'm also trying to work with him to set up a time for him to come on to our podcast on NUIC All Access as well. So
perfect.
Stay tuned for that because I'm working hard to line up a time that works for the both of us to be able to get that going. So just want to give that shout out there.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. That sounds great.
So we're just we're in dead week right now. 2 weeks of practice, 3 weeks until games. Get ready. The season is here. Get out to those games. Cheer for your teams. But as always, root for the NUIC.